And welcome back to the Hot Lab, where we are going to be discussing the best Formula One games of the modern era, pretty much known as the Codemasters era, until those two letters brought them out in 2021. Yeah, EA, otherwise known as Electronic Arts. But enough of that, and more on that later. Let's get into our first Formula One game. And this was a bit of nostalgia here. F1 2010. The first Formula One game by Codemasters. Now, I know what you're saying. Nintendo Wii 2009, they had an F1 game as well. Yes, but that was licensed by Codemasters, made by another developer. This was the true Codemasters first Formula One game, and it had a career mode that allowed you to take part in a 3, 5 or 7 year career with an entry level team. Now, this was not brand new, pray tell, because you had that in the Studio Liverpool Sony F1 games, but that was mainly just sifting through menus, etc. This was absolutely innovative. You could build your reputation big enough to gain a contract with other teams, but what was fantastic about this game was the users paddock. The Formula One paddock itself was used as the main menu, and it changed based on what team you were driving for the career mode at the time. It was absolutely fantastic. The paddock is equipped with the press and team trailer. It contained an agent. The users also had the option to change the design on their helmet, and which could be selected by like a generic national pattern, etc. But you could participate in all weekends of the 2010 season. And you could also use those practice sessions, to get research and development. It started all the way here, back in 2010. And you gained opportunities as you got better throughout the season. You could also, this is going to be an interesting one for some, you'd recognise this, rivals. Yeah, you had your mid-team rival, your rival based upon the current standings in the Formula One season that you had to beat, both of which, with the practice and the rivals, that you had something still today. So yeah, a very innovative game. The only down point I feel about Codemasters F1 2010 entry was the fact that in qualifying, it wasn't true qualifying, because you were doing the laps, but all the other laps were sort of not even simulated. There was almost preset laps, at least when the console edition initially released, which created a bit of controversial buzz. But if that was the only big issue with this game, other than that, it was absolutely faultless and absolutely fantastic start to Codemasters F1 games. Next up is a game that you will probably recognise. Yeah. At the time of recording, it is the most recent game. At number 4 is F1 2023 by, EA and Codemasters. It was released globally on the 16th of June 2023 for PlayStation 5, for Xbox One, Xbox Series S. So in addition to a physics overhaul and user interface overhaul, how many times have we seen it? I guess if you're, I'd loosely say fan of EA, but if you played the old FIFA and the FC games, you'd probably hear that on a yearly basis. But the game also marked the return of the Breaking Point story mode that was first seen in F1 2021, and also back for the first time since 2014, we had red flags. Yep, F1 2014, that much maligned, not very nice F1 game that meant, 2014 that people didn't like, I did, had red flags. Imagine that. But last but not least, we also had the full 2023 schedule of circuits, including the new Las Vegas Grand Prix. But they also added Imola, which wasn't raced that year because it was cancelled because of the horrendous weather. They also had the Circuit Paul Ricard, the Shanghai International Circuit, and the Algarve International Circuit, which was quite a nice bonus. But there we go. That is F1 2023. By far the worst game, but not quite the best, because if you can do your maths, there's very much 3 more. And next up, talking about 3 more, this is number 3, F1 2020. nostalgia for many of you a few years ago, because this is many people's favourite Formula One game. Because of, I think, one big reason. I mean, other than the package was brilliant, the handling was fantastic. The game came out on the 10th of July 2020, and it was also released on, do you remember Google Stadia? Yeah, released on that as well. And it featured a new career mode, a new team mode, a My Team mode, and it let you become the team owner and driver. Yes, you could choose your teammate, you could choose your team name, your sponsors, your helmet, your car livery, your logo, and you could even have and choose an engine supplier. Absolutely fantastic. You could be in Formula One. Yes, Haas are trying. Maybe they should use this. Maybe they should be using this My Team option to have a bit of a practice, because they can't get it in at the moment. But you could accelerate that grid from 20 to 22 cars. And let's be fair, it was, I think, the best new thing that Codemasters had added since 2010, maybe other than something they added in 2013, but we'll get into that in a bit. So My Team mode was brilliant. They revamped the driver career mode with an option also to race for the first time for the career mode Formula 2. You could start in Formula 2 before climbing as your driver career mode into Formula 1, being able even to sign one of the team's driver academies. Ferrari Academy, Red Bull, Mercedes, McLaren. Absolutely brilliant. And I think this game, up until this date, was one of the most innovative games on the current the current generation of like late PlayStation 4, early PlayStation 5 era. It was absolutely brilliant. But there are two more games that we prefer. So let's get into that number two, a classic. Yep, pun intended. It's F1 2013, and there's a very good reason why. Now, before we get into the big addition, as you can probably guess what it is, it had a very solid handling, it had very solid career mode. It was built up from the 2010, 2011, 2012, but the one selling point was the classic cars. It had a classics mode, an F1 classics mode, if you will, a revamped scenario mode, an expanded driver young test, and the ability to save an event mid-season. Yeah, it took us all the way until 2013 to do that, with improved graphics and improved AI and improved multiplayer. But let's go back to the F1 classics mode, the biggest addition that Codemasters had done since since the launch of F1 2009/2010, and it allowed drivers to you could drive in cars from the 1980s and the 1990s. The heads-up display is also altered to the style of the decade. Imagine that. Now, while the 1980s content was on the disc, the 1990s you had to get the Classic Edition or the DLC, and it also had classic tracks. For example, Brands Hatch Jerez, which you could also race the 2013 at the time modern cars on. Imagine that. Modern cars around Brands Hatch. Absolutely crazy and fantastic all at the same time, even though it's sounds like the storyline of a horror film. But let's go back to those classic cars. We had the 1980s Williams, the Lotus from 1986. In 1988 we had the Ferrari, the Lotus from 88, and the 1988 Williams FW12. Drivers such as Alan Jones, Prost, Andretti, Fittipaldi, Michael Schumacher, Gerhard Berger, Mika Hakkinen, Damon Hill, Nigel Mansell, John Alesi, Jacques Villeneuve, Jody Scheckter, Eddie Irvine, and Ralf Schumacher. Because in the 90s edition we had the 99 Williams FW21, which you've probably seen. We had the Ferrari 399, which nearly won the 1999 championship. The 1996 very dominant Williams, Michael Schumacher's first 1996 Ferrari, along with the absolutely fantastic 1992 Williams driven by Nigel Mansell, and the 1992 Ferrari with John Alesi. I mean, imagine that. The scenario mode that came with these classic cars was very much like F1 World Grand Prix on the N64. If you imagine that it had scenarios throughout the 97 and the 98 season, but this had scenarios for decades, across decades, which you could do. They were kind of like bite-sized, authentic racing challenges based on actual scenarios that happened in the history of Formula 1. F1 2013, yeah, let's be fair, one of the best. But not the best, only just. This next one, just by an absolute by a hair, let's say, a cigarette packet, cigarette paper even. It's F1 2021. So it had almost perfected My Team and Career Mode, but the most important thing it introduced was the Breaking Point storyline, which was again one of the more innovative things that Codemasters did. And I say Codemasters because this was the last proper Codemasters F1 game before EA bought them in February 2021. Yeah, this game came out a bit later, but EA couldn't really get their clutches. We didn't have no rubbish F1 World. We didn't have although it was kind of there, but we didn't have the ridiculous pit pass that we have now. Yeah, money, EA. But this was a really solid F1 game, and I think the last really good F1 game that many people appreciated, based on, let's be fair, one of the best F1 seasons of all time, if you take away the last 5 minutes of the last race at least. Yeah, controversy. But you could race the F2 again. It was just F1 2020, but perfected in our eyes, with better handling, better weather, a perfect career mode, a perfect My Team mode, and an absolutely fantastic Breaking Point story mode shoved in as well. And I think the story mode we have to mention is that was a nod, I believe, to the Drive to Survive Netflix era of F1 games. Because I think this was the most casual friendly game with that storyline. F1, as we know, is about personalities, and albeit, not the fanciest personalities in the world, there was personalities in the Breaking Point story mode. It was really enjoyable. I think it was better than the 2023 Breaking Point story mode, and most people really, really enjoyed it. So a massive thumbs up for F1 2021, our best Formula 1 game so far of the modern era. Yeah, thank you very much, Codemasters. If you made it to the end, please give us a like, give us a subscribe. Let us know what your thoughts are. What was your favourite Formula 1 game? But let us know in the comments below. And then we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much for watching.